Filtering and formatting table-like output using sed. Say you're writing a script that gathers system information, and, well, let's just clear the screen by default. And we want to include disk usage, so echo disk usage. There we go. Now, how do we get the disk usage? We can use a command called df for disk free, and we specify -h to say that we want it in human readable units, because otherwise we'll get it all in bytes, which is also useful but less human readable. So let's have the units. Now, this is my home server box. I've got a few drives attached to it, and I generally want to keep an eye on these drives, and so it's just so that I know when I need to start shuffling things around or add more drives. Now, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of output in here that they're not drives. You know, we've got udev, we've got some temporary file systems, and we've got some loopback file systems over here for snap. And we don't want any of that. We're only interested in the actual physical disks, the dev SD entries. So we could run this through sed, our good friend, and say, by default, please don't print lines. I forgot to give it a script. There you go. And now we've just completely suppressed df's output. It's not what we want. But what we want are the lines that begin with caret. Sorry, we need to begin our regex first. So we want lines that begin with /dev/sd and print those. Now we've got to use all these backslashes here because we're matching on the same character that we're using to delineate our regex with. Now there is a way that you can change this character, but I won't get into that at the moment. We'll just stick with the backslashes for now. So there you go, there's all our physical disks and their mount points and their capacity and usage information. But you'll notice we've lost the headings from this table, which is a shame. It would be nice if we could keep that. Now, we can do that, it's very easy. We just need to understand a little bit about how these commands work in sed. So what happens is they're basically made of two parts. One is an address, and the other is a command or a series of commands to execute on that address. Now at the moment this is a dynamic address that says any lines that match this regex, basically, that begin with devsd. But we could also just give it a static address and say on line 1, print it. And we separate these with a semicolon because it's a separate command. So if we run that, you see that we've now got our headings back. Thing is, if we're looking at this and we've got more output above it and more output below it, it's going to look a little bit noisy and going to be hard to differentiate the various blocks of information that we're getting. So it would be nice if we could indent this table, which we can. It's very easy. So something we could do is just run it through sed again and say that we want to replace the beginning of the line with 3 spaces. If we run that, there you go, it's been indented. That was easy. But we are invoking sed twice, and I'm sure that we don't need to do this. So what we can do is say, before we print any lines, so before this command executes and before this command executes, we want to indent them. So the very first thing we do is say substitute, beginning of the line, 3 spaces, and then we can move on to our other commands. And if we run that, no! What happened? Well, remember this regex is looking for dev SD at the very beginning of the line, which it's not now because we've put our indentation in. So we could just say beginning of the line, our indentation string, these 3 spaces, dev SD, and if we run that, there you go, it's back. But there is a better way of doing that. We could just say white space characters, S for space, because /W is word characters, and this is something that I kept getting wrong every single time. I thought /W for white space, but no, /S for space, /W for words. And then we want to say one or more of them. Now, one or more is an extended regular expression command. So in order to get to that in this current mode of basic regular expressions, we need to \a plus. And there you go. We've got one or more. We could eliminate this backslash by using extended regular expressions. But all we've really done there is just remove one backslash. But let's leave it. Let's say that we've removed that. That's cool. Now, something we could have done is just to remove the anchor at the beginning of the line. And that would do the same thing. And you might argue and say, well, that's less code, so it's a better solution. And I generally have a rule of thumb that says that fewer lines of code, fewer commands executed is generally better. Less potential for things to go wrong. But when it comes to regexes, what we've got here is quite a loose regex. This just says as long as /dev/sd appears somewhere in the line, we'll print it. So what happens if some psychopath decides to mount a drive onto /mnt/dev/sd? So let's artificially simulate that, okay? And we can do that by creating a subshell around this command, because we want to insert the extra line into here specifically so that it gets caught by sed. And we're going to echo dev, I don't know, let's say it's a NVMe drive. There you go. There we go. Now you see how this one has now been included in our output. But it's not a dev SD drive, it's a dev NVMe drive. And we were looking for only the dev SD drives. Well, this happens because we haven't anchored the regex to the beginning of the line. But if we do that, and say we want to match on white space and one or more of it, then it goes away. So there you go. There's how to create a nice little indented disk usage table out of the df command and sed. So I hope it was useful. Let me know if you'd like to see more, and have a good one, and I'll speak to you in the next video. Bye bye.